This is an old classic French dish that was adapted by Pierre to make his signature dish of roasted pigeon with lentils and a mushroom ravioli. If you happen to watch Season 7 of MasterChef Australia, you saw Marco in a simplified version of this classic dish being made in 90 minutes. The implication was that this is how things would be done in his restaurant, but that's simply not true. Not even in a 3 Michelin star restaurant. I mean, just think about it. No customer is going to wait 90 minutes for their food, and that would be if the chef could devote all of his attention to one order. What I'm going to show you is how this full classic version of this dish can actually be made in a restaurant. I know it seems almost like blasphemy to say I'm going to improve upon the signature dish of Marco, but context is everything. I'll show you how to achieve phenomenal, ultra-professional results with only above-average cooking skills and some patience. Although very few of you will probably attempt to recreate this entire dish, I'm showing you everything so that you can see how such dishes are actually carried out behind the scenes in a restaurant. Once you get all the prep work done, you can make this in about 15 minutes from when an order arrives. It's all about the preparations. In the case of a dish like this, I mean some serious preparations. Yeah, first step for preparing for surgery here, chicken surgery, is that the chicken has been washed and dried well. Both inside and outside cavity. Got some knives, poultry shears, and a box that I'm going to put the parts in. First step, we're going to separate right along here with a knife. Now you've got this piece here called the crown. That's both the breasts and the rib cage that's underneath it. What we're going to do here is slightly unorthodox because we're going to be cooking the chicken on 2 separate days. So, and we need the skin over the crown and the crown separately. We also need the ribs that are under it for separate days. So we're going to have to disassemble this chicken in a little bit of an unusual way, not something a normal butcher would do. So I've loosened the skin this far. Now I'm going to take poultry shears and I'm going to go around the rest of the crown. So, okay, I've got one side free here. Now we'll turn it around and we do the same thing on the other side. This is like one of the most difficult tasks for me in making these videos, is trying to show how to butcher chicken while I'm running the camera and the knife at the same time. It's a very difficult task. So I pop this little ball joint out here. I'm taking boning knife and I'm just going along here, and I'm trying to get as much of this skin as I can. Okay. Now I've got one of the legs off and I got a lot of extra skin. That's okay. We'll clean this up later. This goes into my box. Do the same thing on the other side. Okay, I just skipped ahead here and I've already done the other side. Now we've got the crown here, the 2 wings. I'm just going to bend this back, just like this. Just break it. Okay, very easy. Now we're going to take this knife. We're going to go in here and separate this. There you go. You have to use your fingers a little bit, just pop it apart. Okay. Now, we've got the crown here separated with, it still has the ribs on the back. We're going to come back. The rest of these legs in the back and everything, this is all going to go into making the sauce in a minute. So I'm going to set this off to the side. We're back to the crown here. This still has the ribs attached. So what we need to do is take boning knife and go in as close to the ribs as we can here, and be very careful. Do not puncture the skin. The skin of this is going to be an extremely important element. It looks like it's punctured, but it's just a fold. I've got the skin completely in one piece. You need this because you're going to use this as the wrapper for the roulade. So you have to carefully work the meat off of this with the knife, and I'll show you what this looks like in just a minute here. Scrape the meat off of this. That way you get the maximum amount of meat. And this is what you want to end up with. You finally separated this sternum from the breast meat. We've got the boneless crown with all the skin attached. Now we can turn our attention back to these two leg thigh sections. You've got a little bit of extra fat on here. Okay, we really don't need that. This is too much. We're not going to use this. Is just waste. They're not even going to use that in the sauce. This is just so much fat that it's not going to be pretty. Just get rid of it. Now the rest of this we do want, and what we have to do is French these. Now this is a lot easier than you probably imagine that it is, and here's how we're going to do it. We take this knife, we work it around, and we take a kitchen towel, make sure you run this through the laundry afterwards, and you're going to twist this skin off. Make sure you don't grab the bone so hard that you twist the bone, because you can actually break the bone. You know, if you have some strength in your arms, you will just snap the entire chicken bone in half. So keep that in mind. Don't go nuts here. That's it. Now, there's a little nub in here, but this will come off easily after we braise it. Now, the next part we've got here is we've got these loose threads. There's a couple of different ways you can handle this. The way that I like to do is to take these one at a time carefully and just use some brute force and just pull these out. Kind of like pulling pin bones out of a salmon. Just make sure that you don't end up destroying the meat. Pull all of these tendons out. This will make it more tender and a lot better for the person that's eating it later. They won't have any of these in, but you'll still have the bone that holds the form. So we're going to go through, pull each one of these out, so you don't have any more. Okay, that was, I think there's one more in here. Okay, one more. Okay. Okay, when you got them all, now, this is what it should look like on the end. Nice and clean. You don't have to scrape it with a knife because it's going to be taking care of itself later. You got lots of skin around here. It's a good looking piece. This goes into the box. For now, we'll prepare the next stage. Same thing obviously with the other piece. Assemble the ingredients to make this cooking liquid, braising liquid. I don't really have a name for this. It's kind of an intermediate process. It's not really belong to anything. I've got the red wine, onion, which I'm going to chop up fine in a minute, garlic, bay leaf, juniper berries, and black peppercorns. Now, you can use chicken stock. Since this is based on a Marco Pierre White recipe, I'm just going to have a little fun here, and I'm going to use a chicken stock cube here from Knorr. If you don't have the Knorr brand, don't use this. Use some chicken stock. Use a couple hundred mils of chicken stock and reduce it. Knorr is actually a very good brand. You know, I have to say that. If you pick the brand to be a shill for, this is the best brand. And getting hot here, I'm going to add the red wine to it. Onions, garlic. They don't have to be cut up too fine. It doesn't really matter. They're just going to be simmered here to reduce them. There's the bay leaf, juniper berries, black peppercorns, and I put the stock cube in half. I'm just going to crumble this into it. And we're going to bring this up to a simmer, a good rapid simmer, and reduce this until it's thick. This is what you should be seeing as it's reducing. Now it's been 15 minutes. This is almost ready. You can see when I drag the spoon through it, we're getting some clean lines here. So it's just thick enough. You don't want to reduce it to where it's burnt by any stretch of the imagination. This is thick enough. So I'm going to do is I'm going to kill the heat. I'm going to add about an ounce of butter, let that melt in. soon as this is melted, I'm going to add that lemon juice to it. Okay, it's been a few seconds here. Butter's mostly melted in. I'm going to add the lemon juice. Let it cool down just a little bit more. In a couple minutes, then we'll strain it. And pass it through a sieve like this as best you can. Now we've got the liquid that's going to be used to cook the chicken. I'm going to chill this down just a little bit to make it a little bit easier to work with, and we'll begin preheating the oven. It has been 15 to 20 minutes. I've taken these French chicken quarters off, and I've got the liquid for braising this has been reduced. It's just barely below room temperature. It's still liquid. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to peel back the fat a little bit. Don't do it completely, but open up a pocket. Yeah, it's a bit of a messy operation. You want to make sure that you get this on the inside of the chicken, between the flesh and the skin. Same thing on the other one. Open up a little pocket and be very liberal with this. Okay? A lot of it on the inside. Then I'm going to put more across the top. The whole thing is going to be completely saturated in this cooking liquid here. It's a braising operation, sort of, but we're doing a couple of other things as well with this, because we're also going to render the juices of the chicken into this, and we're going to use those in the next step. So we're not done with this. When we're done cooking this chicken, we're going to drain this pan, and we're going to use those juices for the next application. So make sure we get all of this off. Now I'm going to take a few sprigs of thyme and put over the top. Put some baking paper over the top of this. Wrap it up with double layer of foil, and then this is going to go in the oven. It has finished cooking and resting here. I'm going to open it up, see what it looks like. Looks good. Now, I'm going to transfer these two pieces of chicken very carefully. If you pick these up by this bone, there's a good chance the bone will just slip right out. So be very careful. Handle them gingerly. Put them into a freezer container or a refrigerator container, plastic box, and save them to the next night. Then we're going to strain this liquid off. This is the chicken pieces in the box. It's going to be covered up, put in the refrigerator. I've got a container here. I'm going to strain this off, and there's a lot of fat on top of this from the chicken skin. What we're going to do is we're going to refrigerate this overnight. We're going to let this settle out, and then we'll be able to remove the fat in the morning. This is the next morning. This is the same thing. I'm just going to take a spoon here, and you can see there's this layer of fat that now it's very easy to pull it off. Now, we could just throw this away, but we're going to need some fat for cooking this later. Get it as best you can. You don't have to, every last molecule you have to get out, but that's fine. Now what you have is this pure, very concentrated material. This is going to be used in both the roulade and in the final sauce. And it's a simple matter of sauteing the wild mushrooms with the onions. and then drain them in a sieve. Get rid of any extra moisture. This is the crown that I took the bones off of earlier, and now the key is to get the skin off of this, detach the skin from it neatly without rupture, without tearing it at all. As you pull it up here, you'll see that the middle has got this transparent membrane. This part is okay, it's safe to cut through, just don't cut through the solid part. So you don't have to worry about cutting this part. That'll be just fine. What you want to do is you want to take it off in one piece, and then we're gonna store it. Some plastic while we make the mushroom filling here. It's a delicate operation, and I'm making it out to be a little bit more difficult than it really is because I want to do it slowly to show you clearly what we're doing. Okay. Unfold it again, and there's the complete piece. And I've got sitting over here, just out of the view of the camera, a piece of cling film, and I'm going to wrap it up like this so it doesn't stick to itself. And I'm going to put this back in the box for a minute while we make the stuffing. And we also flatten the chicken breast. So we've got two pieces of chicken here. We have to decide what one we're going to use for making the force meat stuffing, and which one we're going to use for flattening. Well, this is easy because this one's a little bit more mangled. So I'm going to take this one, and you don't have to worry about it too much either because it's going to be wrapped up in that filling. So this one's going to be the one that I pound out in a few minutes when I'm ready. And this one I'm using for meat in the force meat stuffing. I'd have to weigh out now 120 grams of this. So we'll have a little extra piece of breast that we're not using for this. And you know, I'm getting ready to make the force meat stuffing. I've got weighed out after they were cooked 80 grams of those wild mushrooms that were cooked with some onion. I've got the chicken breast meat. I'm going to dice this up a little bit smaller before I put it in the food processor to get it started. An egg yolk, and this is that reduced what was the wine that got cooked with the chicken legs, turned into a gel overnight. We're going to use a little bit of this too. I've diced up the chicken breast meat with a knife, and also, of course, when you do this, make sure that there's no sinew or anything that's going to be tough in the chicken. You should have taken care of that anyway when you separated the chicken breast meat, but in case you didn't and you left something, that would be the time to make sure you don't continue the mistake on. Okay, first, all I'm going to put in, the first part is I'm just putting in the chicken, a little salt, a little pepper, and the egg yolk. And we're going to first process this and get it as fine as I can. Okay, it's pretty paste-like already. Now I'm going to put in the mushrooms and a little bit of this reduction. I don't know, just a tablespoon and a half, something like that. I've still got this much of it left. This is going to go into the sauce. Okay. And just process this into, you know, scrape down the sides, process it into what's going to be the filling for the roulade. And as usual with the case of pounding meat out, you put it between a piece of plastic film, a couple pieces of plastic film, and pound it gently. In this case, we want to make it, we're trying to make it more long than we are wide. We don't really need that much more width, a little bit, but we want to extend it this other direction so that we have enough material to roll, to make a roll with. And do it gently. Never try, when you're pounding meat, never try to do it with like 3 massive blows. Do it with a succession of small blows. And yeah, it's going to take you a couple minutes. That's okay. Just be patient. And should end up with a roughly square piece of very thin meat. Now you'll notice too that there's going to be a rough side to this chicken and a smooth side. The smooth side was the top part of the chicken, and that's the side. Smooth side is the side that you're going to affix the skin to. Don't do the rough side or it won't stick as well. Got the skin out of the plastic box now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of salt on here. This will help the skin stick to it. Little tricks. It'll help keep it from separating later on. You have to kind of work with this delicately. No two pieces of skin are exactly the same. No two pieces of breast meat are going to be exactly the same. So you just have to kind of figure it out here. Pull it out like you're wrapping a present. The key here is that you want to cover as much of this as possible with the skin, and you don't want to have any folds in the skin. You want it to be smooth. If there's some overhang off the edge, yeah, that's not a problem. We'll trim that up with a knife. You just want to make sure that you've got enough skin to cover the entire breast. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to put another piece of cling film over the top of this. Okay. And make sure we smooth this over too. Now we can flip this whole thing the other way. And what was the top becomes the bottom, and vice versa. Peel this back. And now we have this piece ready for stuffing. Now you can see there's a grain to this, grain running along here. If you stuff it this way and roll it along so that the grain is running this way, it's going to open up on you later. It's going to be more prone to doing that. So you want to go this way, and we're going to roll it in the direction of the grain. And we've got a large little flap here. I'm going to take a knife and go over this. In fact, I'm just going to get rid of this, because that's just going to cause us problems later. And I've got another little piece like this on the other side. We'll just get rid of that right now. Okay, this looks good. Now we come in with that mushroom filling. Force meat. Okay, what I did now is I just moved this to a plate. I've got a roll of cling film set up here on the end that we're going to use in just a minute. And now I've got my fresh tarragon leaves. I'm going to pick these off and give these a rough chop. And I've got my tarragon ready to go here. You always want to chop up fresh herbs the very last possible minute. Okay, and I'm going to pull enough cling film out here to cover the board. Wider cling film would probably be better here, but gotta go with what I can get here. Okay. So now we've got more than one layer of cling film here, of course, because this was sitting on cling film before. Now there's another layer underneath it. That's fine. I'll begin putting some of this tarragon down. Don't overdo it. Just because you chopped up a lot doesn't mean you want to use a lot. We're not making a tarragon chicken here. This is just a little scent of tarragon in the background. So this is plenty. In fact, probably a little bit more than I should have put. And now we come in with the mushroom force meat. I'm going to be quite generous with it. And you're going to have extra here, of course, and this is wonderful filling for ravioli. In fact, ravioli was the accompaniment for this dish originally. I'm the one changing it here and making the roulade out of it. How much you put in, well, you know, it's going to be a matter of some experience. You have to do this a couple times to have a feel for it, but hopefully you can kind of look at what I'm doing and go with that. You can also make a thinner layer and roll it up like a Swiss roll if you want. I'm not a big fan of that for this, but you know, suit yourself. So once you get this going like this, you don't want to roll the skin on the inside, by the way, too. As you're rolling this, do not roll it up so that there's skin on the inside. Keep the skin on the outside. Okay. So I'm pulling the skin back again, and I'm going to begin using the plastic wrap in order to help me here. And this is very difficult to do with a camera sitting in front of me. Okay. Again, just tucking it in like this. Okay, there's going to be some of the filling squished out the side. That's okay, not a problem. We got plenty. That's what it's there for. Okay, we're going to begin tightening this up a little bit more now, and making sure that it's even diameter across the entire tube here. Okay, now after you've got it rolled lengthwise and fairly secure, you put a piece of cling film down the otherwise. Turn it so you have cling film that's going to hang out the outside, hang off the edge, and then we do the same sort of thing again. We just kind of tuck it in like this. Use one hand to pull back on the cling film at the back, the other hand to kind of tuck it and roll it. Now we've got enough on the ends here that we can tie these up. We don't have to tie it up too tight because we're going to wrap this whole thing in foil next. This leaves the same sort of thing again. Just going to pull back a little bit and just going to make sure that it keeps its shape this way. And we're going to begin the cooking by steaming it for 20 minutes, starting in just a minute here. I've got a pot of simmering water here. I'm taking a steamer basket and putting it upside down like that. I've wrapped this in a second layer of foil also, and there's always a seam no matter what you do. There's a seam when you roll up something like that. Always put the seam side down. That way moisture can't come up and get trapped inside and start floating. And even though this is wrapped many times, still this can happen. You put it seam side down, now it's impossible for it to happen because whatever moisture goes in there just rolls right back out again. Okay, I'm going to cover this up and start the timer for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes is up, we remove it from the steam bath. It's quite firm. I'm going to let it cool at room temperature for a little bit, and then I'll transfer it to the refrigerator and let it chill down all the way. And I've got all the parts from the chicken. This needs to be broken up some so that it will cook into the sauce easier. Some people go really crazy. They take a cleaver and they start cutting these up into little tiny pieces to extract the flavor faster. I find it makes no difference at all in the end. You want to loosen the joints, get some cuts in them, but these are going to cook for a while, and these are going to all break up in there anyway. So you really don't have to go crazy. Just break them up into reasonable pieces here. Use a big sharp knife, and if you got big piece of skin like this is going to be mostly fat. It's debatable. How much fat is this adding, and how much flavor is this adding? You're going to have to remove the fat later. I'm going to go ahead and throw it in, but you know, I could also see the other opinion where you just say, nah, it's just too much fat. Just get rid of it. Just kind of power through these bones here, the rib cage and all. And we've got the sternum still where this came from the okay. That's broken up enough. I got this little extra piece of breast meat that came from when I was making the mousse. So okay, all of this is going to go into a hot pan with fat. It's all ready to go. We have this fat that came from skimming off what the legs were cooked in with the wine and the braising liquid there that I skimmed off earlier. So I'm actually going to start the pan off with this. It's got some flavor in it. We're going to be draining all the fat off anyway, so this isn't going to be a problem. Now, let's put all this in. Spread it out here and start browning it. I've got it on a pretty high heat. On a 1 to 10, I got it on 9 because I really want to brown this now. You can see I'm using a splatter guard here to try to make things somewhat reasonable. And I'm going to pour the fat off of this as it cooks. This has been 5 minutes now it's been cooking. Return it to the heat. While the chicken is browning and we're getting the fat drained off of it, we had assembled the other ingredients here. We've got for the mirepoix, which is the onion, carrot, celery, a bay leaf, a couple cloves of garlic, some juniper berries again, a couple of sprigs of fresh tarragon, and a few sprigs of thyme. After a couple more minutes, again, turning these pieces over, make sure that they're getting brown on all sides. So this process is going to continue for a little while. We need to really get some good deep brown color going on here. It has now been about 12 minutes since I started this chicken cooking. As you can see, it's got some nice brown color in here. It's also got quite a bit of fond sticking to the bottom of the pan here now. So we have to deglaze this. First, a little cognac. About an ounce of cognac. It's the classic. I know it seems wasteful. If you want to do classic food, you got to spend money. This kinds of dishes were developed for aristocrats who didn't care what the cost was. They just wanted the best. Okay. I'm not even going to flambe it because it's going to cook for a long time. There's really no point in flaming this off. Now, about 2 teaspoons roughly of cherry vinegar. That's sherry, not cherry. Sherry vinegar. There's still a lot of fond in there, that's okay. We've loosened up some of it. We've got it. Now we're going to put the wine in. I'm turning the heat down now to 7. This will loosen the rest of the fond on the bottom and start to soften that chicken. We're going to cook this until the wine is quite a bit thicker. It's going to take quite a few minutes. I'll keep track of the time. Now, it's about 7-8 minutes. We've got it down to where it is very, very thick. You can see this? It's like a glaze. Now in goes the veal stock. And put in the tarragon and the thyme. Onions, celery, the mirepoix, there it is, and the garlic. All goes in here. The bay leaf and the juniper berries. Now I'm going to turn the heat down to about 5 to medium now, and we're going to start simmering this slowly. This is the level of slow simmer that we're going to maintain on this. It's on now on a scale of 1 to 10. It's on 4 for the heat. That's what it looks like after about 20 minutes. And as it cooks, once in a while you want to turn it around and you try to use the tongs to break these joints up a little bit more as they soften gradually on simmering. And you pull the meat away a little bit. You're going to try to extract as much flavor as you can out of these. And they break up pretty easy as they continue to cook. I can just tear them apart with the tongs now. Now, it's been 40 minutes in all. It's maintained at the temperature of between 70 and 80 degrees Celsius. It's time to strain this off, press down on it, get as many of the juices as we can out of this. I'm putting it in the second pot here because it's going to be reduced some more. But first we're going to try to get as much out of this as we can, the usual old style, classic way. Okay. So this is the liquid that we got. Now you remember this mixture that came out of the chicken legs cooking and was separated. Fat skimmed from it. We're going to go through kind of the same process here. Second time, I'm going to add this together and cook this down a little bit. It's important to do this reduction especially slowly. I'm keeping this, you can see here, keeping this to 70, 72 degrees. You don't see any bubbles, or very, very few bubbles. If you heat this up to rapid boil, you're going to blow off all the flavor that we've worked so hard to put into it. So be patient with it, reduce it down. It's still too much liquid right now. It's been 30 minutes now. Important to pass this through a sieve again, even though you have sieved all of the things that were in it before. You'll still see some solids left behind, as you can see here. It's the nature of sauces when you reduce them. We're ready with these chicken legs to actually cook them. We've got this last little nugget on here at the end of the bone that needs to be removed. I have to do this gently. Okay. Now the last little bit here, let's scrape this off. Okay. And there we have the perfectly Frenched bone. In my videos, I virtually never show you final plating techniques. I'm going to make an exception in this case because this is an important dish. So I have some gnocchi. I'm going to make a separate video showing you how to make these. I made these yesterday. These are cooked lentils, which I also did in advance, just as you would in any restaurant. Here's the chicken that's been Frenched and braised, as you know already. This is the roulade still wrapped up in the refrigerator. On the stove, we have a couple of strips of bacon that are going to begin cooking. This is going to provide part of the fat for browning the roulade. Over here, we have some little carrot drops, as they're called. Maybe I'll make a video showing you how to make these. And some fava beans that are in veal stock with some butter in it to glaze them. Back here we have that sauce that was carefully prepared, and this is going to be warmed and strained just before we're done. And over here finally we have some garlic sitting in a little melted duck fat. You could use regular oil. This is going to be turned into a confit. I've started heating up the bacon and I've unwrapped the roulade. This is what it looks like after you take the foil and everything off. Looks pretty clean. A few minutes later, we've got the bacon has been rendered fairly crispy. I'm going to keep this off to the side. We're going to use this as a plating element too. And now I'm going to add some more oil to the pan. We could just use some of this garlic infused duck fat. Get it going here now. We need to crank up the heat a little bit more. The bacon was cooked on a low heat, like a 4 out of 1 to 10, to render it nicely. The roulade, we're looking to brown it on the outside. So this is probably the most difficult and time-consuming step in this final plating. We have to do this well, and then we're going to broil flash these chicken quarters under the broiler and get everything up together. But the real trick in this whole operation, this is the thing. You need to get this done well and let it rest before we slice it into the pieces that'll be put on the plate. Quick recap: we've got the garlic still poaching. The sauce is very slowly bubbling away. Vegetables are glazing, and we have a roulade slowly being turned around and browned on all sides. And when you're satisfied that you've crisped up the skin enough, then roll it out onto a paper towel, let it start cooling down. We're going to use this fat in the pan to fry up the gnocchi next. So these were already boiled and made. I'm also now going to preheat the broiler because we're getting close to when we're going to need that chicken. also in with gnocchi. I've got a couple of big slices here of fresh forest porcini mushroom, which you probably won't have, but this is also a nice element. Gnocchi are starting to get golden here. These gnocchi aren't especially evenly shaped. That's how you know they're homemade. No, I didn't do a very careful job on these. I should have done a more careful job. But that's okay. We'll cover it up when it comes to plating. We'll arrange these so that it isn't so obvious. Back here we've got these vegetables glazing, and these are almost done, so I'm going to turn the heat off. These are getting very close to being done. Okay, everything's getting really close, so now I'm going to flash these chicken quarters under the broiler. Now here's where you have to really pay attention. Do not burn these or you've ruined everything. So these will take somewhere between 1 and 3 minutes. Watch them. You want them nice and crisp and golden on the outside. You do not want them burnt. This is where tragedy will happen. The sauce has reduced some more. Now we're going to run it through what's called a china cap. Very, very fine strainer sieve to get rid of any of the solids out of this. This is how we get super glossy sauce. Very last stage here, we're going to use the same heat from this pan to rewarm these lentils just for a minute and finish off these mushrooms. The heat is off. And the moment of truth with the roulade, the paillards, and you can see that it's perfectly cooked through the middle. You use a sharp knife. Just cut it into sections, and then we'll lay it out on a plate in just a minute. Here we have one possible plating. I have this very thick reduced sauce. Even though the skin is crispy, I'm going to pour this over it anyway because it will stand up to it. And the sauce ties all of this together. You want to make sure you have enough. You don't want a dry plate. So we're not going to put little dabs of sauce. We're going to actually give it some sauce the way it should be. Okay, now. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.